Hi, I'm Alison Taylor.
And I'm Taylor.
And we're the hosts of the Anxiety Chicks podcast, where we dive deep into the reality of anxiety, nutrition, and mental health.
Listen as we explore all things anxiety healing while keeping it real, including our own struggles with mental health.
We'll bring our expertise as healing professionals to the conversation while discussing the tools and strategies you need to heal the anxious mind.
Listen to the Anxiety Chicks on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. I'm Alison Taylor.
And I'm Taylor. And today we have probably a very relatable episode for anybody who struggles with anxiety symptoms. But we're not just talking about anxiety symptoms. We are going to talk about the fear of feeling off, the fear of when you feel a sensation that doesn't feel like a normal sensation, what makes us enter that new stage of panic? Why is it that we feel a certain way and then all of a sudden we just can't let the thought go and we're spiraling? And I know you're probably listening to this right now and in your head you're thinking, wow, that's me. I wake up and I have one little twinge in my head and the next thing you know, I'm at the ER. And I've been there. Allison, have you been there with your brain?
100%. Yes. You think well, mine is usually I'm like, oh, I think I'm doing good. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then like something happens quickly and I just get really scared. But yeah.
So basically feeling off, like when you hear that, what does that make you think of in your head when you hear the words feeling off?
So now I know this would probably look different for a lot of people, but mine is really when I feel lethargic, when I'm sort of like nauseous, but not sick nauseous. I kind of can tell now the difference between my nauseous anxiety versus nauseous really sick and IBS issues that I have, but just very lethargic. I feel like I'm very irritable and I feel like I can cry at any minute. So I'm extra super hypersensitive to things. And also just like with the sensitivity thing to go along with that, a lot of stuff is heightened with my senses in not a good way. And like loud noises are really I can't actually take a lot of loud noises when this is happening. Usually I don't no one loves loud noises, but I'm like, okay, whatever. But it almost makes me angry when I hear someone or like, hear something bang something. I'm just really irritable. So all of that, all of that is what it feels like.
No, that's valid. That's valid. I feel like for a lot of people, it can be like sudden dizziness. It can be off balance. It can be a weird twinge in your chest, weird vision for a second, a feeling of feeling detached. And I think what it is the vagueness is the part that makes it scary. Something that can be so vague and something so just random. So our brains hate uncertainty. So when something feels different than what we normally feel, our minds all of a sudden try and label it and put it into a folder really fast and usually catastrophically.
That's true.
The brain's threat response system is overreactive. So right when we feel that, so say you wake up in the morning, you take 2 steps, and then all of a sudden you feel like a sense of dizziness, like the floor below you just kind of moves, right? Your brain, its response system immediately starts to go overreactive. So the amygdala is like your body's smoke detector. And in people with anxiety, it's way too sensitive.
Good old amygdala.
The good old amygdala. So when you struggle with anxiety, your amygdala is sensitive. So if anybody's listening to this and you're like, what the heck is the amygdala? Take this as your homework. Go read about the amygdala and its connection with anxiety and how we process emotions and whatnot.
It's all, if you want to read about it, just buy the Anxiety Healer's Guide and buy the Anxiety Healer Guide for clinicians, because I talk all about the amygdala. I have like a chapter about the amygdala and the limbic system and what happens to our brain biologically when this happens. Shameless plug. Go on.
So like I said, the amygdala is like your body's smoke detector. So think of the smoke detector in your house right now. So instead of checking if there's a real fire, it sounds the alarm at the tiniest puff of steam. So think of when like you cook something on the stove, and when you cook something on the stove and then you go put like water on it real quick and how it does that like bit of steam. Nothing's wrong. It's not a bad thing. It just does it. So there's not a real fire, but there is something happening. So your body treats feeling off like an immediate threat to your survival. Your body wants to protect you. It wants to take care of you. It's spending its whole day to keep you alive at all cost. And so when we feel these things that are already overreactive brain, because we are more sensitive if we struggle with anxiety, our amygdala is more activated, we take that symptom or feeling and we already send it into, oh my gosh, we're going to die. So, like, I stepped my toe and now my brain is like, the internal bleeding, goodbye forever. Like, you know what I mean? The reaction, the A plus B, the C is so life or death to someone with anxiety. Whereas, like, my husband, he could wake up, feel that same feeling of dizziness and say, and move along about his
Totally.
day. His body's smoke detector isn't going alert, 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 call 911. Whereas mine will take that and immediately jump to the worst case scenario. So you're not alone if you deal with that. If you
Yeah.
wake up and you have some weird symptom or just throughout the day you feel something, you're not alone. Because, like I said, the amygdala, it's way more sensitive when you struggle with anxiety.
Yes, I always think to myself, what does it feel like to not have an overly sensitive amygdala?
What does it
What is
feel like
it?
to stub your toe and not think you're going to
What
die?
what what does it feel like? Why is my amygdala sensitive? I mean, what's it like? My little amygdala. But no, I do think about that sometimes. Like just how my gosh, some people just they don't have that response. They just don't. And okay, must be nice. But yeah,
I also want to give grace to anybody because when you struggle with health anxiety, you are more hyper attuned to every shift in your body. And I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. I'm sorry. Like, and I tell myself that. I actually give myself grace in the sense of, like, I tell myself, like, hey, we are a little more sensitive to the shifts in our body compared to some other people, and that's okay. Like, that's the card I was dealt, and I know this about myself, and it also helps me process symptoms too. Is that, hey, I know I'm a little more sensitive to little shifts in my body. I'm very hyper aware of how my body feels, and I can feel any little off thing, and that's okay. I don't immediately jump to that, like, oh my gosh, this is really bad, like I used to, because I've gotten to that point of making that relationship with my health anxiety better.
totally. Yeah.
And so it's not just that you're noticing these symptoms more, your body's interpreting without you even thinking about it, that these little shifts in your body that maybe someone else who doesn't struggle with anxiety feels. When you struggle with anxiety, it's immediately saying, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's not your fault. So I'm sorry if you also deal with that. Like, it's not your fault that that's how you're wired. It's not your fault. And I had to give myself grace for that too by reminding myself, like, Taylor, it's not your fault that you're more sensitive to things than other people.
Well, that's no, like that's what I was gonna kind of piggyback off of because um, I was talking about this in one of our lives, and when you have anxiety, that little amygdala, that little sensitive amygdala is so sensitive that it thinks you're in danger all the time, and you're not, right? So, and there's a lot of different reasons why it's sensitive, right? There's biological, it could be you're born maybe more sensitive to that. There's trauma you go through, there's different life experiences that, make it more sensitive. But it perceives certain situations as really dangerous when they're not. So you have to remember that when your brain is interpreting situations, whether it's body sensations, right? We talk about health anxiety, these body sensations, our amygdala is interpreting that as like, this is something dangerous right now. Oh my gosh, I need to do something right this second. What am I going to do? Worst case scenarios. As a cognitive therapist, I would say your brain goes into overdrive with all these cognitive distortions, right? What if it's this? What if I'm going to die? What if I'm going to have a heart attack? What if this? What if this? Oh my gosh, you're jumping to
Okay, you
conclusions.
wait, let's wait. I want to slow you down because you just said two, no, you just said two good points.
Yeah.
You said the conditioning. So, like you said, this can happen from, say, a past panic attack. So that muscle memory of your anxiety has that muscle memory of that one symptom can mimic that first time you had a panic attack.
Oh, yeah.
So that one time I fell off and it turned into a full panic attack in CVS. So now even the smell of CVS sets off that exact feeling. So you start to correlate those patterns in your head. And like you just said, cognitive distortion, the catastrophic thinking patterns. Could you speak a little bit on that? So that's kind of where the brain goes, right? Immediately when you have that thinking process, that's what it's labeled.
So, yeah. So, in the CBT world, there's a list of maybe 12 to 15 types of cognitive distortions. And one of them is catastrophizing. And there's probably three that I get a coaching client for the first time or a private practice client, anyone that talks to me about anxiety, and I show them the list of cognitive distortions, and this is part of the practice, and again, have them all in my book. And I say, okay, I want you to mark down every single cognitive distortion that you struggle with and just place a check next to it. And sometimes people literally check off the entire page. They think to themselves, okay, this is my brain at any given time. And then I say, okay, I want you to now circle the top three. Which are the most intrusive types of distortions you have? But every single time, I will say maybe 99% of the time, catastrophizing is in there.
Mm,
So our anxious brain it's almost like this cognitive bias. We're always looking for the worst case scenario because our brain is
mhm,
so conditioned to looking for it.
mhm,
So in like 0.2 seconds, our brain goes from one like minor, again, it's minor symptom or minor situation, which means it's not dangerous, right? But our brain is interpreting it as dangerous. It goes from like 0 to 2 seconds. I mean, like 0.2 seconds, your brain automatically thinks something is wrong. So you don't have time to process it basically. So, someone that has that overstimulated amygdala, if they have a headache, 0.2 seconds, their brain automatically thinks, I have a brain tumor, I'm going to die.
mhm,
Someone who has a more balanced amygdala or who doesn't have an oversensitive amygdala will have time to think and say, like come from a place of curiosity. Oh, what is that? Oh, I kind of have a headache. Oh, maybe I'll go take some Tylenol and just get off of work a half hour early and lay down, and then I'll feel better. Oh
mhm.
my goodness. Like, oh yeah, I just want to get this one Excel spreadsheet done. It is so immediate that the anxious brain just goes right to that. And catastrophizing is one of the biggest distortions that happens at any given time. So it's really, really important to start becoming more aware of that. That's like the biggest thing you can do when you start this work is trying to think about how you can slow that part down, but be aware of it, right? Because it happens so quickly. You need to start really starting to be conscious of, because it's a lot in your subconscious, right? So you want to be more intentional about thinking about the way you're processing things, and that just takes a lot of practice, honestly.
Yeah. And like Allison said, the thinking pattern. So somebody who has a more anxious brain, it's going to be, you said, "Oh, I have a headache, brain tumor, I'm going to die." It's more the extreme. So when we have this, so say we feel the headache, we start to develop the anxiety, and then that leads into more symptoms usually. So that's when we start feeling off, we feel scary, anxiety increases, nervous system kicks in, more symptoms. Then you have the heart racing, stomach turns, your vision gets weird, and now you're 10 symptoms in. And this is the anxiety feedback loop. One sensation turns into 10 because your nervous system is stacking symptoms on top of fear. And I think that's where people are the most scared because then it really does feel real. It really does feel like an emergency because you were like, oh my gosh, it's true. I am having the brain tumor because look, now my vision's weird. I need to go to the hospital.
In this moment is when panic attacks start spiraling and start happening. This is when the panic attack, and you go from a level 2, which you feel balanced, to like a level 9 really quickly. This is the time when that happens, and if you don't catch yourself, and that's why our awareness comes in, that is so 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 important. You're not going to have more control over that. If you're able to start recognizing, and playing kind of a detective with yourself, right? Start understanding more about the body sensations that happen to you when you're starting to get scared. Starting to learn the language of feelings, like you're feeling scared. Okay, that's okay. Being scared is a completely normal feeling that it's not good or bad. It's just a feeling that's uncomfortable, right? So get clear with that. What's making you scared? What are the thoughts that are making you scared? Thoughts are just thoughts. How can you kind of like detach from them a little bit? How can you practice being an observer of your thoughts? Doing visualizations, closing your eyes, and doing meditations and picturing how you can view your thoughts as clouds. I like to do the analogy of closing your eyes and imagining that you're at a lake and that and it's a beautiful day and you're just staring at the lake, but there's like 1,000 fishes swimming. And those are your thoughts. Some of the fishes are a lot bigger and they're trying to scare you. They're jumping out, they're trying to like jump out and get you, but they can't. They can't come and get you. Some are a lot bigger though, and they swirl around really heavy, but you're just looking at them. They're in the lake and you're just kind of looking at them, and then some go away and they come back. And so when you think of it that way, you're detaching yourself from the thought and making you realize that it doesn't have meaning. The thought doesn't have meaning, right? Like you have a headache and your thought comes to your head, I have a tumor, I'm gonna die. Like it's literally just a thought. In that moment, nothing is happening to you. You have a headache and that's uncomfortable, but in that moment right there, you're safe. You're here. Let's try and think about what you can do to get your headache to go away. Now, of course, that's like easier said than done if you're having some really severe symptoms. And of course, go to the doctor, go to the hospital if you need to. Of course.
With that, a good idea is having a when to check versus when to chill. So, not everything needs a medical
Love
response.
that.
Sometimes it needs a nervous system response. Right, let me say that again. Not everything needs a medical response. Sometimes it needs a nervous system response. So, just because you felt the headache doesn't mean you need the medical response. So, something you can do to help yourself with this is create your own 24-hour rule symptom checklist. And I actually do this. So back in the day, I used to feel a symptom and it was like, I got to go to the doctor right this instant. Like, I got to go. Now I'm like, okay, we have like a pretty bad headache. This sucks. But if I still have this headache, say tomorrow, and it's still this level of pain, then I might call my doctor. But giving yourself a 24-hour rule of like, if it is not and let me tell you something about people always say, but how do I know I don't need to go to the ER? And one of the best things a doctor told me one time is you won't be wondering if you need to go to the ER if you need to go to the ER.
Oh my gosh, totally.
Think about that. You won't
Totally.
be wondering if you need to go to the ER if you need to go to the ER because it's not a moment you'll be feeling anxiety, wondering what if. It is like, no, you got to go. And I've been around a couple medical emergencies. And let me tell you, in those moments, those people weren't even panicking because they really, like, it was a medical emergency. And I think a lot of times we think we're like beating it or like we have this control of something. I don't know what our brain thinks that we have, but we think we can control things, but we can't. And so really focus on giving yourself, and why I say that 24-hour rule is because I bet you maybe by the next day when your anxiety kind of comes down and you can look at it in a more level, rational state of mind, you might say, oh, wow, okay, I did feel that way, but I'm feeling a lot better today after you sleep, after you eat, whatever it is. And so basically, at that moment when you are feeling this way, Allison, what are some techniques or grounding tools people could use when they feel this symptom and they're going to access their 24-hour rule, but they're still feeling anxious about it? Because let's be real. Me saying all this, Allison saying all this, you're not going to listen to this and be like, you know what? Yay, I feel this symptom and I'm just perfectly fine. You're going to sit at home and wish you were at the ER. But what are some things people can do? They can leave this episode, and if they tomorrow wake up and they have a headache and they feel scared, what can they do?
Okay, first I want to say I love that 24-hour rule. And I want to also put that in place, not just for making a doctor's appointment, but for Googling anything.
Mm.
So I want you to do the 24-hour rule for Dr. Google as well. Okay? We need to wait 24 hours before you Google anything. And try not to at all, but if you can wait, okay. Um, okay, the best thing that you can do when you're having a really uncomfortable sensation or uncomfortable emotion, honestly, is breath work. So everything starts with the breath. Everything starts with the breath. When you're feeling uncomfortable, and you have to remember there's no good or bad emotions. Emotions just are, they just happen. They're not good or bad. There's just some that are more uncomfortable than the other. So, like feeling scared or worried or sad or frustrated or angry, those are all very uncomfortable emotions, right? And every time we experience those emotions, it doesn't matter if it's angry or scared, our body responds to them. And the biggest response that happens is our breath gets short and we're not able to access the breathing patterns that we need to get oxygen to our brain. And then all of those other symptoms start happening. So, the best thing you can do is to start a breath work practice so that your body automatically knows how to breathe when that happens. Because when we start panicking, our brain goes into overdrive, like we were talking about, and we're not rational anymore. So, we're not going to be able to access the brain that says, oh, wait, let me get my coping tools. When you're above, like I have a rating scale, right? One is the most calm you've ever felt. 10 is like, I'm going to the ER because I can't even, I'm having the worst panic attack right now. Okay. When you get above a 5, your brain starts losing access to any rationality. And then you get to a 6, 7, 8, forget it. You don't have access to knowing what to help yourself with. You're not in control anymore. So the best thing you can do is when you're more balanced, when you're from a 1 to a 5, you practice. That's your window of tolerance, right? I talk about that a lot. And being inside your window of tolerance when you're more balanced is when you have to practice breath work. You have to incorporate a breath work practice into your daily life. Maybe you start with putting in some alerts in your phone of taking 3 belly breaths. Start practicing the types of breathing, by the way. If you don't know what a belly breath is, go on YouTube and type belly breathing. Try rectangular breathing. Okay. Rectangular breathing is one of my favorites because the exhalation is longer. So you breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6. Alternate nostril breathing is great. So Google any of these things. Actually, these are things to Google. If you don't want to Google your symptoms, Google all of these things instead in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Google the breath work, okay? Practice those things. So you can use Google for the good things. So make it like a 30-day, commit to 30 days of doing this breath work practice 3 times a day. And in 30 days, see how you do with if your body is just creating a habit of breathing differently now. Because I did that and I've done it. And now I literally breathe so differently. Even if I am literally in a really heightened state, I still have my panic days. I haven't had a horrible panic attack like my 30th birthday again, knock on wood, but who's to say it won't happen? Right? It might. And my body just knows how to breathe different now when I'm at like a 6, 7, 8. So it doesn't get to that point. So breath work, breath work, breath work. Okay. Next thing is grounding yourself. Really try practice grounding exercises. A lot of times when you're in this moment and you feel like you're kind of disassociated from the real world, because that's what happens with trauma. We feel like we're like outside our bodies or like the world around us isn't real. You really want to focus on using your senses to bring you back to where you are. So the 5 senses exercise is one of my most favorite. It's what I tell everyone to try and practice. Again, it's not just one time. I want you to practice this on a daily basis. I want you to create a lifestyle, a toolkit for yourself. So it is using your 5 senses to focus on what's around you. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Just going around and just describing in detail what you see. And also, when you're heightened with your panic, distraction exercises are good for your brain. So say the alphabet backwards. Try and say the alphabet backwards. Try and use the alphabet, but every letter is a fruit. So go down and say A, apple, B, banana, C, carrot. It can be vegetable too, whatever. Use those things to get your body into balance again. So all of those are going to be really good when you feel like you really are waiting on something, or you have these symptoms and you just feel like you're crawling out of your body, but you don't want to Google and you're not going to make the appointment. You're going to sit with it. You're going to teach your body how to sit with discomfort. That's the best thing you can do. Starting to learn how to sit with feeling uncomfortable. And that is just a shortened version. There's so much work that goes into having to cognitively shift your brain at the same time, right? Because your brain's going to be spiraling. And that's just like a whole nother episode.
No, I love that. So those are some good things you can use to help cope in the moment. And from this all, just know you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're not overreacting. You just have a nervous system it's been through it. It has dealt with a lot. I want to take this moment, and Allison, maybe you can too if you feel this way. And I want to invite you to what would it feel like to notice a symptom and not react? Like, so right now, imagine yourself experiencing some sort of symptom, sit with it, and what would it feel like to feel it and just not react? I think that's a good exercise for you to take with you this week too. Maybe throughout your day, just do a couple times of like feeling a symptom, thinking of feeling a symptom and how it makes you feel. And maybe it might trigger a little bit of anxiety, but can you sit with it and not react to it?
That's a great healing tip of the week.
Yeah.
You did my healing tip of the
So
week. I love
I
it. So
did.
learning how to sit with it. I love it. Yeah. No, I love this episode. Yeah. And just feel free to message us if you have any more questions, and the anxietychicks@gmail.com. If you want to contact us, let us know, if this episode has helped you. And if you want to learn more about the cognitive piece of it, we talk a lot about it on different episodes, but I'm happy to help. So just DM me or something.
See you guys next week.
Okay. Bye, guys. Leave us a review.
Bye.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
We hope this episode reminded you that you're not alone and healing is always possible.
If something we shared helped you, the best way to support the show is to leave a review or share this episode with a friend who needs it.
And make sure you're following us on Instagram @The Anxiety Chicks for more support between episodes.
We're just two chicks on our own healing journeys, cheering you on every step of the way.
Until next time,
take a deep breath. You've got this.